Welcome to my video for the vintage video game quilt swap. I just completed this today and wanted to share it with you since everyone's always asking what I'm doing and blah blah blah. So these are just a couple of shots of some flowers in my yard, and now I'm going to get started with the quilt. So I had this idea of how I was going to make a Frogger quilt, and there was no Frogger fabric, so I decided I was going to make my own design and started by having a road and, you know, just a typical screenshot from the Frogger arcade game from years ago. So this is where I started with, and if you're familiar with Frogger, this will look very familiar to you. So when I started to do the road, I had to divide, and I used this ribbon, and what I did was I cut them into equal sized strips, very small, and then I just sewed them down. And here's how I did that. Coming up. There you go. So you can see that this is where I started, and in order to figure out how far apart they were, I basically just used a small ruler and then tried to keep the same distance between the lines all the way down in this fashion. And this is how it ended up. It looks quite nice, I thought. So very happy with that. So then I moved on to starting to make the little these are the little turtles that the Frogger has to jump on in order to get to the other side of the water. So I made the template, and then I also cut the logs, which I know what they really look like right now, but give it some time and you'll see exactly how it ends up looking. This is how I made the template for the turtles. I just cut it out of a little piece of cardboard and then traced it onto fabric that had fusible web on it. And I use a double-sided fusible web so that one side initially sticks to the back side of the fabric, and then you peel that off in order to stick it to other fabric. And these are the little pieces that I use to make the body and the feet and tail for the turtles. And this is a finished turtle. And those took quite a long time because I had to arrange them with tweezers because every time I tried to move them with my fingernails, something else would get moved. So then I had everything put down onto the blue fabric, aka the water, and it was all ironed down, and I decided to start putting the finishing touches on all of those little pieces. So the next thing that you're going to see is I'm going to start working on the cars for the road. And I just used the sport cars. I couldn't find a good example of what the trucks would look like, so I just decided that I would do little race type looking cars. Just did different colors, and that made it easier to have a plan. So I had a template, and then I cut all of those out. And this is whenever I started putting them down. Please ignore the water stains on my ironing board. So anyways, the little cars came out cute. I really liked them. Very, very happy with this. And so then I started laying them down on the road and fusing them on. And I was very happy with this as well. Then I decided to start making frogs, and I wasn't sure how many I was going to use or if I was going to change anything up. And in the end, I decided that I was only going to do the one. So now you're going to start to see how I'm going to embellish certain things. Like you can see on here that I've put some decorative stitches on the log, and I've also detailed it more to make it more look more like a log and not just, you know, a piece of poop on fabric, right? Okay, so I must really like the cars because I keep showing you that. But here we are now with all of the logs, or most of them anyway, finished up, and it started to really look a lot better. I really liked that as well. And here we are back to the cars. And you could see that I had like different colors, and Well, just a couple of different colors. I didn't go crazy. And these were the frogs that I had cut out. I had the frog with his back and then also his two eyes, which were the pink. And then I started to do the detail that I was going to have on the turtles. Basically just stitched all the way around each turtle. And this is just a close-up showing the stitching right on the edge. And this is where I started putting down little patches of grass, one with a duck in it, one with a mushroom in it. And here you can see that I've got decor on the little flowers on the logs. And I also have the frogger who's jumping across a log. And you'll see that in just a moment. And there's the little frog. He's making his way across. And yeah, I thought the little flowers on the logs ended up turning out nice too. And for the bunches of grass, all I did was I found this really cool yarn and I just wrapped it around a few times on my fingers and then sewed it down just haphazardly, really, with my sewing machine. Just kind of went back and forth, and then take a finger and just kind of scoosh them up. And these are the places where the frog will end up. There were so many different ways that I saw it online, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. Here I am having coffee. That helped. So then I start making a logo for the back of the quilt. And I found this Frogger logo, and I went ahead and enlarged it. And then I'm cutting out the Frogger letters. And when you're putting them down on the green, you want to make sure that you put them down backwards. And the reason you do that is because when you're going to flip it over to stick it onto the fabric below, it'll be going the correct direction. If you did it the other way, all of the letters would be backwards. So you want to start off backwards and they end up forwards. And here's the finished product for the back of the quilt. And here we go. This is me getting ready, I'm actually doing my quilting and using the quilting to make the water look like it's moving, and there's different colors of blue thread in there just to kind of give it a little pop. And this is just like a close-up shot of the water. And so then once I had that done, I was just needed to cut all these little threads. And I guess you wouldn't really need to, but I'm kind of anal retentive and I like it to look neat, even if it's, smack in the middle of the quilt. So I cut those off. And then I started making my binding. Now when I'm cutting my strips, I do 2.5 inches. That ends up making your binding will be in like 3/4 of an inch after you've finished. So you go ahead and you fold it in half. I didn't print this, but you fold it in half, iron it down, and then the unfinished edge you start to sew onto your quilt. And you want to make sure that you leave a good 10 inches in the middle to join where you don't sew down the binding. And right here you want to bring your stitch all the way up to 1/4 inch from the end of the quilt. And then you want to back stitch and cut, and then you'll take the tail and you'll flip it up, and then you're going to flip it down so that you make a nice neat little square and they all match up. And then you're going to start from the very end and start stitching 1/4 inch from the edge again. And here's once I've finished sewing the binding onto one side, onto the front side. And here are the tails that I've left with approximately 10 inches in the middle to give me some room to join those two. Now what you want to do is you want to overlap your two tails by the 2.5 inches that was your original measurement for the binding. And here's the line that I'll put down, and that's exactly where I'm going to cut. And once I do that, then I can go ahead and join them. I want to pick up my fabric from the middle. That makes it, the two ends, the two tails come together closer and makes it easier for you to stitch. You want to flip the two tails so that they're attached, just as you would when you're making your binding. And then you want to use a ruler to measure all the way across and mark it. And I pin it because I just have learned to love pinning. Pinning helps to keep things in place. It does not mean that you are not a good sewer at all. And then you just want to stitch across on the line that you drew. And you want to make sure that you back stitch at the very beginning and the very end. After that, you want to cut to 1/4 inch from the end of where you sewed, just to get the extra fabric off. And then when you fold it over, now you have it going completely across, and it's miter joined and beautiful. So then you want to just sew it the rest of the way onto the front of the fabric. And you want to flip that over to the back side of the fabric, and you're going to take your yellow binding, or whatever color your binding is, you want to flip it up, and you want to flip it over the white line where your stitches are from the front side, because you want to just barely cover them. And you want to take your I use binding clips. You take a binding clip and you want to clip it all the way around so that it holds them all exactly where you want. Now, for some reason, I've now put the finished picture down. I thought I had a picture of the binding clips on there, but you get the idea. If you need more tutorial on that, you can find plenty online, or you can ask me and I can try to do a better job of showing you how that works. But this is my finished quilt. It is my vintage video game quilt swap. That's like a mouthful. So this is the back of my quilt, which has the Frogger logo and then my label. And here's a close-up of the label that I have. And I actually ordered those online. If you need to know where to order those, just ask me down below and I'll go ahead and let you know. And here's my finished product getting sent off to my partner, and hopefully she will love it all. And I hope you guys like this video. Please click on the like and subscribe.